Let's be honest. That moment when you understand English perfectly in your head. Maybe you've read it, you've written it,
Yeah.
but then you actually have to speak it.
Yeah.
It can feel like a completely different thing.
I
right?
know, absolutely. Like there's this gap.
Yeah, a disconnect between what you know and what, actually comes out.
It's such a common hurdle. And the experience we're looking at today from our source material, it just hits this nail on the head, really.
How so?
Well, this person talks about that feeling, that mental blank when a conversation starts, and the frustration of words just feeling, I don't know, miles away. Plus that worry about sounding, well, not as smart as you actually are.
Right. And they mentioned those specific anxieties too, like just wanting to avoid speaking situations altogether, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Or that mental gymnastics of trying to get every grammar point perfect before you even say anything.
And the accent worry, that's a big one for many people.
Definitely. And you know that feeling when someone asks you to repeat yourself? It feels so small, but it could just sink your confidence right there.
Exactly that. And that's really what we want to unpack today. We've got this really thoughtful, personal story detailing one person's whole journey through these exact challenges.
Okay.
So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to pull out the practical steps and maybe more importantly, the mindset shifts that help them get more confident speaking English.
And hopefully find some useful insights for anyone listening who might be in the same boat.
That's the plan.
So this person whose journey we're following, they were trying things, right? They weren't just sitting back wishing.
Oh yeah, definitely putting in the work, experimenting with different methods. But it sounds like, initially anyway, some of those common approaches just weren't really, moving the needle much for speaking confidence.
What kind of things are we talking about?
Well, think about the usual suspects. They mentioned spending hours watching tons of YouTube lessons.
We've all been there.
Right. Or diligently trying to memorize these long vocabulary lists, but kind of in isolation.
Okay. Just lists of words.
Yeah, and really getting bogged down in complex grammar rules, studying them obsessively.
Which, on the surface, sounds like the right thing to do, doesn't it? You're putting in time, absorbing info.
Yeah.
So why didn't it translate? Where was the gap?
Well, what's really interesting here and what the source highlights is the difference between understanding the language, the rules, the words, and actually being able to use that knowledge smoothly in a real conversation in real time.
Okay, so it's like knowing the theory versus the practical application.
Exactly. It's like knowing all the different instruments in an orchestra versus actually conducting them all together to make music. One is knowledge, the other is skill in action.
That's a great analogy. So all that studying built a kind of passive understanding.
A foundation.
But it wasn't actually training the doing part, the speaking skill itself. The main takeaway seems to be that passive learning alone just isn't enough for fluency.
Precisely. The big realization for this person, and it's so crucial for anyone learning to speak a language, is that fluency really comes from doing it, from active engagement, not just sitting back and absorbing.
Like learning to ride a bike.
You got it. You can read the manual all day long, but you won't learn until you actually get on and start pedaling, right? Maybe wobble a bit first.
Okay, so we've talked about what didn't really work, the passive stuff.
Yeah.
Let's dig into what did make a difference. What were the specific things, the practical strategies that finally helped them, break through?
Right. There were a few key changes they made. One of the first was bringing in daily speaking practice. And importantly, it wasn't always long sessions.
Wow.
No, even just short bursts of actually speaking seemed to make a real difference over time.
And they mentioned something specific, talking to themselves in the mirror. Now, I imagine that feels a bit, weird at first.
It definitely can. There's that potential awkwardness for sure. But think about it, it's actually a really low-pressure situation.
True. No one's judging you.
Exactly. It gives you a chance to just practice forming sentences, hear the words out loud from your own mouth, and crucially, start thinking more directly in English without worrying about someone else's reaction right away.
That makes a lot of sense. A kind of safe space to just experiment. What other techniques did they use?
Voice recording was another one. Surprisingly effective, they found.
How did that work?
They'd simply record themselves talking, maybe about their day or just random thoughts that came into their head spontaneously, and then they'd listen back.
Ooh, I could see how that might be a bit confronting. Hearing your own voice, your mistakes in another language.
It can be, yeah. But the real benefit is the self-awareness it builds. You start noticing things, patterns in your speech, maybe where you hesitate, pronunciations you weren't even aware of.
Right. Things you wouldn't catch otherwise.
And just as importantly, they mentioned it, let them track their progress. You can actually hear yourself getting better over time, which is, hugely motivating.
Absolutely. Tangible proof of improvement. Okay, what about interaction? Did talking to other people play a part?
Yes, definitely. That was another crucial piece. Language exchange.
Finding practice partners.
Exactly. They connected with people online, native speakers of English who were learning their language, and they'd trade practice time. Maybe say 15 minutes in English, 15 minutes in the other person's language.
That's really smart. It's mutually beneficial, and you get that real back and forth conversation practice.
The kind you just can't replicate talking to yourself, as useful as that is initially.
Yeah. Now, something else they mentioned, a kind of mindset shift, really struck me. This idea of stopping the chase for perfection.
Oh, this is huge. So important for language learners. That constant pressure to be flawless, get every single grammar point right, have a perfect accent, it can be completely paralyzing.
It really can.
And what's fascinating is that when this person consciously decided to let go of that impossible ideal, to actually allow themselves to make mistakes, their learning seemed to speed up.
It feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? You'd think striving for perfection is the way.
You would. But it seems the fear of imperfection, the fear of making a mistake, was actually what was holding them back more than anything.
So mistakes became learning opportunities.
Exactly. They shifted from being sources of embarrassment to just beta points, opportunities to learn and adjust. And linked to that, finally, was the importance they placed on positive self-talk.
Right, they used a specific phrase, didn't there? Something like,
I'm learning. Every word I speak brings me closer to fluency. Something along those lines.
I really like that. It feels like such a constructive way to handle those moments when you feel awkward or stumble over a word.
It's incredibly powerful, yeah. Learning a language can be emotionally taxing, let's be honest. Having those kinds of positive internal messages can really boost your resilience and keep you going when things feel tough.
So we've got these practical techniques, mirror talk, recording, exchange partners, allowing mistakes, positive self-talk. But it sounds like underlying all that was a bigger shift, like a real turning point in their whole approach.
That's exactly right. The fundamental change wasn't just what they were doing, but why they were doing it, or rather how they thought about speaking English.
How do you mean?
They moved away from that constant underlying fear of making mistakes. They stopped seeing speaking English as some kind of, high-stakes test they had to pass perfectly.
And shifted towards
Focusing on connection, on just being understood, on actually communicating with another human being.
So English became less of a performance to be judged and more of a tool for expressing ideas, connecting with people.
Precisely. They realized that effective communication isn't really about perfect grammar or sounding exactly like a native speaker. It's about getting your message across clearly enough for the other person to understand you.
And when that mindset shifted, when the focus became authentic communication rather than chasing linguistic perfection,
that's when the confidence really started to build. Because the pressure was off, you see. It wasn't about performing anymore. It was about connecting.
it makes sense. That release of pressure allows you to actually relax and use what you know.
Exactly. And that growing confidence, which came from this new mindset and from consistently doing those practice activities, it created this upward spiral, a really positive feedback loop.
How so?
Well, the more they spoke, the more comfortable they felt, the more assured they became. And that naturally just encouraged them to speak even more.
Which builds more confidence and so on.
Right. It feeds itself.
So for anyone listening right now, especially if you've felt that frustration, that struggle with spoken English, please know you're really not alone in this.
Not at all. This feeling, this difficulty, it's incredibly common. It's practically part of the process for most people.
And as this person's experience shows so clearly, real progress is possible.
Absolutely. It takes persistence, though, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone sometimes, and maybe rethinking how you view the whole learning journey.
So the message is really keep showing up. Take that step. Speak badly. Speak with mistakes. Speak brokenly. Just speak.
Yes, because that active engagement, that willingness to just use the language, warts and all, that's where the confidence really comes from. It's built brick by brick through actually doing it.
Yeah, not by waiting until you feel ready or perfect.
You might be waiting a long time. And remember this final thought. Your voice, your ideas, your experiences, they have value. right now, regardless of how perfectly you speak English today.
That's a great point.
So embrace the journey, embrace expressing yourself, even imperfectly. Recognize that every single word you manage to say is actually a step forward.